Hey guys, this is Alex and Drea. I'm Alex, she's Drea, and this is TRUUU Podcast, and this is our first episode. We're really excited about it. We're really excited to share with you, and Drea is here to tell you more about our first week.
So in this episode, we are going to really be just diving into who we are, how we've gotten to the place that we are currently at in life, and just the experiences and challenges that we've faced along the way. At some point, at some points during the podcast, you'll find that we have gotten a little bit sidetracked and we start going into tangents of, just kind of like side stories. But overall, it really is just who we are, getting to know us, explaining, who you're listening to, who you're going to be wasting your hour listening to. But basically, that's the core of it. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Anything else to add, Alex?
Yeah, we really enjoyed making it. Obviously, we have a lot of jitters to get out, I think, because we're really just starting out with this whole thing, because that's why we have margaritas on the table.
Right, yeah. Being the first episode, give us that little leeway of we are still figuring things out.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
For the most part, I think we did a pretty good job. We covered all the topics we wanted to talk about.
For sure. So we're excited to have you listen to this. We're excited for all the stuff that we have planned for the future, and just take a listen.
All right, so let's just jump in to the first topic, which I think it makes the most sense for us to just begin with how we met each other and our feelings on that. Do you want to elaborate on that first?
So we met through University of Laverne, which we both are unintentionally repping right now. ULB sweatshirt.
Shout out to ULB.
Yeah, we met as suite mates. I was in a single and you were in a double with another girl. And as far as that goes, I feel like I don't remember anything super specific as far as like those first days go. I remember going to, some orientation events, skipping some orientation events.
Skipping, especially because skipping them.
Going to that museum that we went to.
Oh, the Huntington Museum?
Is that what it was?
Yes. It's like a pretty famous museum, the Huntington Gardens.
I'd like to point out that my recollection of things is pretty poor. Like, I was explaining it to you the other day. I'm just like, I don't have the space to keep all this stuff. I do remember, the early days and whatever, but that is how we met.
Right, that's correct.
In a sense.
That is how we met, you're correct. But I do remember you from SOAR Day, which... Obviously, let me elaborate on what SOAR Day is. It was like this day prior to beginning school for our college that I don't really know the purpose of it. It was basically for you to go and I don't know. Do you want to explain what it was?
SOAR was an acronym for something, because everything there was an acronym for something, I feel.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was specifically, but I know that I think that we were separated out in a group of honors kids, because I do have a very vague recollection of seeing you in the honors lounge when they were giving us the tour of the area.
Right.
It was in the basement of Miller Hall, I think, at the time.
Yes, correct. Which is really funny you say that, because I was about to say that I thought that SOAR Day they divided you in depending on which concentration you were going into, which in my case would have been biology, and obviously yours would have been Spanish.
Yeah.
Which kind of perplexes me as to why we were down there. And if you are correct, if it was separated by honors, then yes, that makes a lot of sense. But if it's by department, which I kind of feel it was, why were we there together?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm just like, obviously it couldn't have been because of that, because why would we have been there together? Because we were two totally opposite, but I think that we're getting ahead a little bit.
We are. We're jumping really far ahead, but I'm so sorry. But I do remember specifically you, and I don't know why I remember you so vividly, but I remember you, I remember your mom, I remember what you were wearing.
What was I wearing?
You were wearing that red sheer tank top with a bandeau underneath.
I know exactly what tank top you're talking about, actually.
I'm not kidding.
I was a big fan of sheer tank tops and bandeaus back in the day.
Yeah, I really remember. I don't know why you stood out to me. I guess I just knew we were going to be friends. But anyways, which is kind of funny why once we moved into the dorms together, because obviously I didn't know who was going to be my suite mates other than Nina, and I saw you, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this girl. So it just kind of lubed my entry into becoming your friend.
That's really funny. You know what that's called in the movies?
What?
It's called a meet cute.
Oh my God! Wait, hold on. What movie is that from? Where they talk about
Holiday.
The Holiday? You're right. It's so cute. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good reference.
Yes.
So, anyways, and I think during these first days of orientation is where you and I kind of like really hit it off because we had similar personality types and that we were both pretty introverted at the time. I would say at the time. I think now we've kind of transitioned into a more extroverted-ish personality.
Yeah.
To an extent.
For sure.
But yeah, at the time, it was definitely like you and I were just like, oh my gosh, this is way too much socialization.
Oh,
hence
it's the
us,
worst.
yeah.
We
Hence
can
us
get into
becoming
that a
friends.
little bit later, but oh my goodness, it was the worst.
It
I
was
was
a lot.
thinking about it on the drive over here. I'm just kind of like, man, those days was so draining.
It was a lot. It was arguably too much.
Yes.
But
for sure.
okay, well, I think that pretty much covers how we met.
Mm-hmm. Cycling back a little bit. So the point of this episode really is supposed to be, you know, what has influenced who we are today.
Right.
So, you know, it'd only be appropriate to start back way from the beginning.
Right.
So we grew up, I feel like, probably in fairly different ways because unlike most people, I grew up on a dairy, whereas you grew up in the city.
Right. I mean, the suburbs-ish / city.
And I say the city like I wasn't a part of the city. I grew up on a dairy in Ontario.
Yeah,
Like, that's
yeah.
not really like that, you know,
Rural.
it's
Yeah.
not at all rural. But, I mean, we didn't have neighbors, per se.
Right. I mean, they were similar lives enough to the point where we can, I don't know, like kind of understand each other, but at the same time different, where we have different stories, different upbringings, things of that nature.
Yeah. All right, so tell us a little bit about South Hills.
Okay, well, I lived in a community called the South Hills community, which I say it that way because it's so pretentious. And I mean, I feel like a lot of communities within cities is pretentious. But that is what it was called. That is what my high school was called. So for the sake of staying consistent, that's where I went to school. And shout out to anyone who knows any of the drama that went down with South Hills, because that school for a while was named like the worst school in America, which we can get into reasons as to why that was later in probably future podcasts. But if anyone knows what I'm talking about, yeah, not good. Like I said, it was relatively affluent. When now as an adult, I really appreciate that because I know that I didn't grow up with struggle, which is something that you really take for granted, you know, when you're little and you're just kind of like living through life and you're just such a brat and you're just like, hey, my life sucks, you know, and it's just like, no, it really doesn't. But yeah, it was basically somewhat of like a upper middle class bubble that I grew up in. And because of that, I feel like I had friends and all the people that I grew up with experiencing the same aspects of life, going through the same like issues or like having the same benefits of, I don't know, where they're living, whatever. So it was really easy to make friends with people at the time, which is really interesting because I don't really find myself staying friends with any of those people. But at the time, it just made sense because it's just like, oh my gosh, we live, you know, down the street from each other. My parents shop at the same grocery stores, you know, like we just see each other all the time. We're just going to be friends by default.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's pretty typical for, you know, most people when they're growing up. They don't... I feel like there's a pretty small percentage of people who actually retain those friendships going throughout their adult life, which I certainly didn't.
Right. Yeah, I think
all.
that's probably pretty common everywhere. But it's interesting for me to look back on it now because it's just like, you know, there's these people that you think that like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be best friends with you forever. And then as soon as you're taken out of that bubble where you have like the exact same experiences, it's just like, okay, we're completely different people.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no way that we meet on any grounds anymore.
And when would you say that the bubble, you know, really didn't
Popped.
exist? Yeah, when it popped. When did it cease being that way for you?
You know, I feel like it really started changing like mid to late high school, when everyone was just kind of branching off into their own individual interests and like doing extracurricular activities outside of like school itself. And obviously like applying to colleges and just going up in general. I really feel like that's when I started noticing that like, oh my gosh, and this is a little bit depressing, but I started noticing that like I really didn't have the core group of friends that I thought I had. You know, they weren't really that like close knit, other than, you know, the exceptions of like one or two, obviously the people I'm still friends with. But yeah, for the most part, I was just like, wow, it really hit me like a ton of bricks how surface level a lot of my friendships were.
Yeah, I mean, well, at that point in time, unless you've gone through some, like, really traumatic experiences, how, you know, deep are you expecting those friendships to be? Because, like, you form those really deep relationships with people once you've gone through something with them. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't up till that point, why would you?
Absolutely. That's a really good point, actually. I didn't really think about that. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, the only reason we were friends was because, you know, like, our parents had an easy time going, like, you know, and hanging out at PTA meetings together, you know. We're just, like, forced to be friends.
Now, for me, my whole bubble lasted a lot longer, I would say. So, for me, growing up on a dairy, not really having neighbors in the traditional sense, like, my friends are really my brothers.
Right.
So, we had, you know, neighboring dairies, like, a couple miles down the road, and we always went, actually, to private school. Not the entire time. We were out for a quarter. Mm-hmm. Maybe not even a quarter. I think it was 2 months. We made it till October. And when I was in 4th grade, we were at a different school, at a public school, and my mom hated it so much that she took us out and put us back in OC.
Why did your mom hate it so much?
I think that she knew that it wasn't really a good fit for us because, I mean, at this point we had pretty established friendships. Me and my twin brother, because that was what it was. So, for context...
Alex is a twin, for context.
Yes, I'm a twin. I have a twin brother. But for more context is that my oldest brother, so I have two brothers, my older brother, my twin brother. So my oldest brother was still at OC. Mm-hmm. Like, he was in 6th or 7th grade at the time. Yeah, because I think he's a 4 years. 4 years older than us in school, I guess. No, 3, because we were in high school together.
Okay, yeah, so 3.
At the same time. So anyway, he was quite a bit older, so I don't know why he got to stay. I guess he just got to stay probably because he had more of an established life at OC, whereas Jacob and I, my twin brother Jacob and I, didn't. And the thing to know, which if you didn't already guess about private school, is that you have to pay tuition in order to go. So, like...
Right. So your mom was just kind of like, let's see if it would work out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my parents, you know, together made that decision.
Right. I'm so sorry.
Like,
I don't know why I just said your mom. Like, your dad had no say. No, okay. I'm so sorry. Sorry, Mr. Weirdman. Okay, go on.
So, that's so funny. So, yeah, we went for 2 months to a different school. And I'll tell you what, it really was a bad time. I'm not really sure how much my parents were really aware of because... I feel like my brothers and I were always raised to really be kind of independent. We kind of took care of things on our own as far as, like, issues went.
Right.
So we were in a situation where my brother was getting hassled by some of the other kids in that grade. Mm-hmm. And then I was hassling them in return. So, like, it was this cycle of, like, bullying.
Okay.
Where they were bullying him and I was bullying them.
Got it. Okay.
In retaliation.
That's cute.
All the way down the line.
Right.
I guess. I mean...
it's cute for you, but I'm sure your brother was, like, not thrilled with it.
I mean, here's the whole thing is that in the distribution of my family, like, who's the most, like, volatile is definitely me. Mm-hmm. Like, both my brothers are very laid back and they're very non-confrontational for the most part. At least, especially more so back then.
Right.
Like, we were never raised to, like, fight.
Yeah.
Or, like, fight even amongst ourselves, really. So I was the one who was more so inclined to be that way. And obviously, us being twins, like, we were really close. So, you know, me seeing my twin brother hassled by someone, like, you know, I don't really feel like back then in 4th grade, a lot of girls were getting bullied. Mm-hmm. Like, that wouldn't have been a thing. Like, that's more so something that I felt like boys did. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't have been an issue for me. So it was more so an issue for him. And then teachers got involved to a certain extent.
Oh, wow. So, like, it was a thing.
It was a thing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I kind of crocodile teared my way out of it.
I don't want to get sidetracked, but I do have a funny story about getting in trouble in elementary school and, like, crocodile tearing my way out, too.
Okay.
Remind me eventually, but okay, go on.
Anyway, so it was decided that wasn't a good fit for us, so we went back to OC.
I forgot why we were talking about this for a second. Like, I was just like really into your bullying story. Like, this is becoming a PSA on anti-bullying.
Don't bully kids.
Okay, I'm sorry. To come full circle. Okay.
Anyway, so we went back to OC, and then we finished out all of our schooling there, and I had like a pretty close-knit group of friends, like going, like I had a really good friend starting from kindergarten until about 8th grade, where our friend group broke up over a boy.
Right.
It had nothing really to do with me. I didn't even actually really know the extent of what happened until the first day of our freshman year of high school. Like, I had no idea. So I had a pretty simple upbringing where, like, I was just really with a close-knit group of people, and it was just a lot of the simpler things in life. Like, you know, bringing it back, like, to the dairy, like, we didn't have a lot of we didn't have a lot of toys in the sense that, like, we had a lot to play with outside. Like, we would, I feel like every summer we would be in charge of feeding calves. Like, we named them after, like, all our favorite, like, characters from movies. And,
how cute.
Like, we named one Tauros, like the Pokemon.
That's cute. That's cute. Okay. Okay, so it was more arguably, like, a childhood. Like, without, like, this modern era of, like, iPads and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because I feel like my parents really tried to limit the video games to the boys as much as, like, they could. So we had a lot of that going on. We had a lot of pets growing up, mostly because around 4th of July every year, a lot of dogs run away. Like, they get scared by, you know, fireworks because fireworks are legal they're legal around that area.
Right, right.
So yeah, we got a lot of dogs that way, a lot of stray dogs that we adopted and all this stuff. So we had a pretty tight-knit community, and it's really funny, like, how hillbilly it really got that I didn't realize until I was older, because I think I might have told you the story before, but for every New Year's, all the Dutch, because we're Dutch as well, so I'm half Dutch, so...
Right.
So the Dutch community, like the dairy community, would get together in that area at one particular family's house, and we'd have oliebollen, which you already know what that is, but for those who don't know...
Oh, I know.
It's the origin of the donut hole.
Oh, it's good.
The Dutch invented donuts, man.
It's good.
It was the origin of the donut hole. That's basically what it is. It's delicious. So you sit around, you eat oliebollen, and all the kids would play and whatever, and we would all go to this lemon tree that they had on the property, and we'd have lemon wars. So we'd throw lemons at each other. And, like, hide behind hay bales. Just throw lemons at each other, like dirt clods and stuff.
That's, you gotta make do with what you have. And you guys had lemons. So I'm not calling it hillbilly. Is it a little bit more farm life than I lived my life? Yes.
I mean... yeah, there's that, and, like, we'd catch, like, animals, like, me and one of my friends, like, back in the day, we caught a one-eyed cat in the tractor barn.
All right.
He did not appreciate it either. We put him in I had a toy cat that came with a cat carrier, and we stuffed this cat in there. He was not happy about it. I'll tell you what.
I could imagine. I would not be happy about that either.
But yeah, so, you know, my bubble lasted for a pretty long time, so it wasn't really popped until I went to college.
Okay.
That's really when I was meeting people who were raised a lot differently than I was.
Right.
Because I grew up in, you know, like a pretty conservative Christian, you know, bubble. Which was great. And it is great. And, like, that still is a defining characteristic for me, but it was a lot different for me than going to college and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, so now that we kind of touched on a little bit what environment we grew up in, let's talk about what we anticipated we were going to be doing when we were older, when we were our age now, basically. Do you want to start us off? Do you want me to go?
I'll go, for sure. So, who I thought I was going to be is kind of a weird question, actually, because I always had a really hard time imagining myself past high school. Because, you know, that's really all I had, you know, any insight into as far as, like, you know, you identify with the older people around you, not necessarily with your parents yet, because you're just not, you know, in that brain space. But, like, I had friends who had older siblings who were in high school. So, like, I imagined myself to be kind of like the all-American girl sort of thing that still existed back in the day.
Yeah.
So, like, I imagined that I would be a cheerleader in high school, which I was, but not in the way that I ever thought I was going to be. And then I think I'd also just, like, imagined, like, ending up being a teacher, like most of the women in my family, because I feel like 85% of the women in my family have eventually ended up being teachers. It's just in the blood that way, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good occupation.
It's a great occupation, for sure. And, I mean, because I also was raised in a more traditional household, like, it was also that just, like, hey, like, this is a great occupation to have to, like, settle down and raise kids and all that stuff, because you'd have some more time off.
Right, exactly.
To kids and whatever, which obviously didn't end up happening, because here I am working in a very non-traditional industry.
Right, which we'll get to. We can get to that in a moment. But
yeah, so that's more so, like, kind of what I thought that I was going to be, like, a very happy, bubbly, friendly sort of person, which, at a certain point you deviate from that stuff.
Right.
Because, life happens regardless.
Yeah,
so.
It's really rare, I think, to find someone who has this picture of what they're going to be doing when they're older, and it actually happens in that exact same way that they thought it would happen.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to account for unknown situations.
Yeah, because that's always, like, the personality I thought I was going to grow up with, and it's almost, I feel like, the opposite of the personality I grow into, because here I am now, like, trademarked by your husband's friends by being super sarcastic, even though they barely know me. They're just like, oh, that sounds like something Alex would say, because it's super sarcastic. So, sarcastic and, I guess funny and laid back and kind of shy. Yeah. Which I didn't expect to be at all.
Yeah, not necessarily the traits that one would say an American girl has.
No.
Right.
Certainly not. But, I mean, well, what about you?
Okay, well, for me, I want to preface this with the point that I don't in any way mean this negatively towards my parents, but and especially my mom, she somewhat pigeonholed me into certain career choices from a very young age. Like, I'm talking, like, kindergarten. Like, when I was in kindergarten, like, my mom was just like, oh, when you're going to grow up, you're going to be an orthodontist. Why? I don't really know. I think her mentality was that they have, it's a good career, they make good money. It's not too taxing on, like, the type of, like, strenuous work you're doing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, like, what she was really, like, ingraining into my brain for the longest time. And then once she kind of got over that, or she was exposed to speech pathology in the school systems, then she kind of went on to this, like, oh, you should be a speech pathologist. But that one kind of lasted a shorter stint, and she really landed on being an optometrist. So for the biggest period of my life, I really thought I was going to be an optometrist when I was older. And I'm talking since, like, 5th grade through freshman year of college. I was, like, dead set on this mission in life. And I mean, it's not that it was a bad thing. It was actually really great because my mom, she had this mentality of really instilling self-confidence in us when we were younger. So when I was, she would drop me off to school in the morning. She wouldn't let me out of the car until we recited, like, affirmations, which I didn't know what they were when I was younger. I was just like, I have a mantra. But now as an adult, I'm just like, wow, this is actually really positive interaction that my mom was really instilling in me at an early age. But, I wouldn't be allowed out of the car until I repeated, like, I'm the best, I'm number one, I'm smart, I'm great, kind of deal. Which is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
Thinking back now. But, oh my gosh, Choco in the background. Excuse the barking. But, yeah, so I grew up with this idea that, like, I was going to be a very successful individual. I was going to go into the medical field, optometry, whatever. It's, like, the least medical, but whatever. No shade there. Like, no shade to optometrists. It's fantastic, but, you know what I mean. Which is really crazy because obviously I absolutely did not end up in that field, not even close.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about that later, but it kind of feels right to talk about it now.
I can go for it. We could circle back.
Okay, I'm sure we'll get to it eventually, but do you want to just touch a little bit on what you ended up doing?
So for me, after all this, I went into college being a Spanish major and all this stuff that I did towards that goal. And then I ended up going into what most people define as like communications. At Laverne, it was broadcasting major with a concentration in TV. So I did a lot of filmmaking. I had a lot of experience doing a live TV production for like sporting events and concerts and stuff for the local like Laverne San Dimas community. And I actually ended up getting an internship at Fox Studios for their network engineering and operations department. So no one knows what that is really. So I have to say that, oh yeah, I just work for Fox Studios, because no one else is going to like really understand like really what I do. But
yeah, the complexity of it.
The complexity about it. And then recently we got, acquired by Disney. So now I'm technically a Disney employee, but I do the same job.
Pretty bad. Oh, I'll have to put a little something noise over that. Okay, well, yeah, so it's interesting how, you thought you were going to be a teacher, and you definitely are not a teacher, and definitely not living a life where you have the hours similar to a teacher in the least sense.
Because as one would expect, like, working in TV never sleeps. Yeah. It's always on 24/7, so my department really services that aspect of the industry, so we are a 24/7 department. We take turns working holidays and working weekends and all this whatever. So, yeah, it's a lot different than what I thought I was going to grow up doing. But one thing that is very similar to you, and I feel like how our parents treated, our future, is that the understood of the conversation between me and my parents is that their children were going to succeed. They're going to do well. Not necessarily like, you better do well, but like they already understood, like, you guys are really smart. You guys can do whatever you want to do. And especially like me as a little girl, there was never anything like, just because you are a girl doesn't mean that you aren't going to go as far or do anything that, your brothers could do or whatever. Like, I always had equal opportunity in my family to show off what I had to do, which I feel like a lot of girls probably growing up in our age group didn't really have as much, because I feel like it's starting to become more in vogue now to treat younger women like that. Right. So, I mean, we do have definitely those similarities, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic, I think. Kind of circling back to what I ended up doing, which is interesting because I'm quasi still in the stage of trying to figure it out. I'm not 100%, like set on anything. I did kind of have a stint working in like real estate, but not really doing like the agency aspect of it, but doing the administration marketing side. And now I'm doing like small business enterprise and have like, a coffee shop, tea house, whatever the hell. But going forward, who knows? But I can tell you one thing, it's definitely not optometry.
No,
I can tell you that I am not doing optometry, and I definitely did not pursue my biology major. I switched after my first semester to sociology, which also I'm not doing anything with right now. So kids, doesn't matter what you get your degree in, because you may not even use it. Don't listen to me, kids. Stay in school. But okay.
You want to know what's kind of funny though? Huh? I also had a goal of being an optometrist when I first got into high school.
That's so funny.
Like, when you get into high school at OC, you sit down with the guidance counselor and you fill out like your aspirations for this 4 years. So like you fill out a 4-year plan, which I'm sure I still have in my house somewhere. And that my goal at the end like was said like I was gonna try to be an optometrist.
That's so cute.
So, like, I was planning my high school classes to that end, which I really don't feel like made much sense, really. Yeah. Because especially at my school where, there wasn't as many AP courses. I don't know how I was supposed to, like, really gear my education in high school towards, like, that
optometry, right?
Sort of thing. Like, my goal was to go to UCI and study, biology to be an optometrist.
How interesting.
Yeah. So that's, but then high school went its course.
Right.
And took us a whole different direction.
Yeah. And you kind of realized, no. You realized earlier than I did, which props to you, because you didn't have to go through the whole mental breakdown in college when realizing, because I definitely had a huge identity crisis.
I you remember that I did change my major as well. I went through my own different, identity crisis in that respect.
But. Right, and I don't want to, like, try to, like, diminish your experience in any means, but, like, considering I really, really thought from, like, 5th grade to college that this was my life, like, this was how it was gonna be, and then realizing that, oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for it. And it wasn't even me realizing that, it was my advisor telling me you're not cut out for this. Was horrific.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember those days of all of you guys going to biology labs and me being a Spanish major, just like, LOL, bye.
Yeah, I was
Let me sit here and watch my movies because I already have my homework done.
It was a waste of a semester, that's for sure. But anyways, okay, let's push forward a little bit. I feel like we're really getting sidetracked on a lot of these topics. But, okay, let's talk a little bit about experiences in high school that shaped us going into college.
For sure. So, I think something that's similar between you and I is that we were both athletes. I feel like you were much more of a more traditional athlete than I was. Well, because...
Yeah, I guess traditionally.
I was given a couple of choices when I got into high school. So either I was going to continue playing an instrument, which I did when starting from 5th grade until 8th grade. I played clarinet for a couple of years. I was given the choice between, you could still be in band, or you have to, or you...
Play a sport.
Play a sport. Okay. So I took stock of what sports were available to me at my high school. And I already knew I'm not competitive. Not in the slightest bit. I don't really care about winning games. That's not my bag. But, I always had that, a small thing in the back of my mind, like, oh, I should be a cheerleader, even though at that point in my life, I knew that wasn't really my personality.
Okay.
Because I think anyone who knew me at the time knew that I was going through my goth phase.
Cute.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, the goth kind of scene kid phase, so...
Everyone went through that phase, though. Let's be real. Let's be real and honest with ourselves. Everyone went through their emo phase.
Yes, I feel like they did. I mean, perhaps not my brothers, but yes.
Oh, all right. Anyway. There's the exception. Don't at me.
Yes. So, I ended up trying out for cheerleading... and the tryouts were actually, like, because there was only a varsity team at my high school, because my high school was so terribly small.
Right.
Like, my graduating class was 130 kids. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So, it was such a terribly small school, and the cheerleading squad was such a small program that there's only varsity cheerleading. So, when you were trying out for the team, like, you were automatically trying out for the varsity team. So, I remember in middle school... taking the bus to the high school to go to cheer tryouts. So, like, they had, like, cheer workshops every day for, like, a week at school. And that Friday, like, was, like, the last practice. And then the Saturday, you went to tryouts.
Okay. Fun.
So, I don't really feel like they necessarily were in a position to say no to anyone.
Right.
Because I'm here to tell you that I was horrible at it. I was so... bad. I could not, like, I couldn't remember choreography. Like, it was just awkward. It was horrible. But I made the squad, regardless.
Right.
So, I did that for 3 years, and I actually, at the end of my first year, my freshman year, I ended up getting the most improved award at the end of the year. So,
that's so cute.
It was night and day, basically,
right.
From the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So, and then I ended up becoming... cheer captain my junior year of high school, mostly out of, if you can't, like, if you want something done right, do it yourself. That's basically what my thought process was behind it, because the people who were, in the positions of leadership before, like, I had some feelings about, like, how things were run, so I went up to my coach, I remember after a game once, and I was kind of like, hey, like, I want you to know that it's on my radar that I want to be cheer captain, next year. So tell me whatever I need to do in order to make that happen.
Right.
Like, what areas do I need to,
which is really, it's a sign of leadership, taking the initiative. So honestly, it makes sense that you're a cheer captain, which is funny to me because just you as a cheerleader is something that I can never fathom.
See?
But
I told you.
But the fact that you were a captain makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
If that concept makes sense.
Yes. in the land where nothing makes sense. Sure,
That makes
let's
sense.
just add in
Right.
that I was cheer captain. So,
Absolutely.
That that option was presented to me like, hey, you have to do either continue with your instrument or do sport, because in order to get into college, you have to show that you're well-rounded. Mm-hmm. So that's the only reason why I was an athlete. So that kind of shaped the course of my high school years, mostly because I started off in high school with no friends, basically, because my friend group had broken up from before, and my first lunch period as a freshman in high school, I ate by myself next to a classroom.
That's so heartbreaking. That is so heartbreaking. I can picture it. Oh my gosh.
You want to know what's even more sad about it?
What?
I had both my brothers there on that campus.
Oh my god. What jerks. But you know what? I get it, because a similar thing happened to me before. But yeah, that's terrible. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, so, that's how I started out. And cheerleading really helped me out in those years, because the only friends I feel like the only friend mostly that I retained from high school, she was my co-captain in cheerleading. Okay. So, that shaped my life then. It shaped my life, towards the end of high school, because she was the one who introduced me to my first, I would define, real boyfriend. Right. Because that was her boyfriend's best friend. Mm-hmm. So, she was like the you before I met you. Okay. Yeah, she was kind of like that, like the initial spark into your social life. I would say so. Okay, so then I'll just speak a little bit to mine. Very similar to yours. I think probably more so, my life has been largely infinitely shaped by sports. Mm-hmm. Not just in high school, but since, the beginning of time. I think as soon as I was birthed, my parents were discussing which sport is she going to play. Mm-hmm. So from a very young age, I was very involved with ASO soccer, which is really funny because... ASO soccer, man. ASO that's soccer. The one. You're going to be in that one. That's where you're going to go. Everyone's done their stint in exactly. ASO soccer. Everyone's had an emo phase. Everyone's been in ASO soccer. But it's really funny because when I first started playing soccer, which was the first sport I ever played, I was god-awful. I was so incredibly bad. I remember thinking to myself one time, a season, I was just I will never score a goal. It's not in the cards for me. And it's really funny because the season after that, literally the next season, it just everything clicked. And I think all my athleticism started just happening all at once. And you unlocked that part of your brain, and all of a sudden you were a sports star. Yes, basically. Literally, it was overnight. It was bizarre. It was just I had this epiphany, and I was just oh my gosh, I don't want to be this person who's god awful at sports. I need to make a change. And then my body's okay, let's do it. But yeah, during that time, I was also doing a little bit of junior league basketball, which I'm not even gonna get into because I have such trauma from my basketball days. Also very terrible at that. And then it all kind of led up to 5th grade when I was playing in a tournament for soccer, and a girl pushed me down. It was once it was getting pretty competitive. It was the spring select, whatever, the better people put into a team. And a girl pushed me down, and the way I fell was straight on my arm. My arm was straight when I made impact with the ground, and I'm so sorry, it's gonna get a little bit graphic, but my arm literally snapped in two. One way was going up, the other way was going down. It was this huge wave. And I remember just seeing it, laying on the floor and seeing my arm like that as a 5th grader. Mm-hmm. And I started screaming my head off. Understandably, sure. Right? I was holy God, I'm dying. This is the end. This is how I go out. Yeah, you're probably not going to look at your arm and be oh, look at that. That's right? Interesting. Right. Probably today, if something were to happen like that to us, we'd be okay. We would panic a little bit. But it wouldn't be so kind of deal. I don't know, maybe. Then again, I don't know, maybe. Sure, yeah. It won't be as irate probably, but it would be I can't even look at this. I'm gonna throw up. I can't look at my arm this way. Yeah, it wouldn't be, I don't know. It'd still be bad. But anyways, after this happened, my parents had this idea in their head that, I was this weak, tiny, little feeble daughter who could not prevent things like this happening in contact sports. So they immediately pulled me from any sort of sport that had team or contact or anything fun basically, and put me into tennis, which obviously it's individual. The only thing you're going to hurt yourself with is your own racket if you hit yourself.
But yeah, so then I was put into tennis at a very young age, and it's a very individual sport. Like, it gets very lonely. And also just the community in tennis and like the culture is so cutthroat. Like, some of the girls and some of their parents are so set on just like, I'm better than you. You're trash, whatever. And I'm also just like, I didn't fit the stereotypical tennis player. I don't look like you wouldn't look at me and think like, oh yeah, she plays tennis kind of deal, you know?
Yeah, but I also feel like tennis wasn't really a thing when I was like around where I was growing up. Like the first I ever like knew about tennis, like my high school had a very small tennis team that had like maybe 5 women on it.
Yeah,
just like I wouldn't know what a tennis player looked like.
In general, it's just kind of, it's a smaller sport. It's not as well-known sport. Which, okay, people who are tennis players are just like, no, there's no true tennis, it's this, blah, blah. Whatever, guys, it sucks. Okay, but anyways, so because of this, I kind of grew up into this, like, very kind of isolated, and probably shaped me into why I am more leaning towards introverted. Mm-hmm. Because I was just growing up in, like, this alone state, basically. Mm-hmm. I didn't have like a teammate or like teammates, whatever. And additionally, another thing that really shaped me was my boyfriends growing up. I started dating relatively young. I would say he wasn't really a boyfriend, but like my first crush kind of boyfriend was in 6th grade. And from there, growing up, I really was shaped my experiences with boys, mm-hmm. which I today kind of regret. But we're going to get into that in the next podcast. Actually, we're going to be speaking about relationships and crushes, so I won't really dive into that too much. But it definitely did shape me. And lastly, I want to talk about my best friend growing up, who also really shaped me into who I am today. Mm-hmm. She was basically like my sister. We were best friends since 1st grade. And we had a terrible breakup in high school, which to me was literally the end of my life. I don't know if you guys have ever had a breakup with a best friend, but it's arguably worse than having a romantic breakup.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
That's the person you would go to.
Yeah. It's like an emotional support system that now has been like yanked out of your heart. Mm-hmm. So that definitely was something that I really had to work through growing up. And like I said, all of these things all really contributed to kind of like the isolated personality type that I ended up having towards the end of high school going into college.
For sure. My friend experience in high school was a lot like that as well.
Yeah.
Just being so wayward with friend groups and never having like a place to belong that you just never felt like you belonged.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's also why we kind of like vibed with each other, because we were just like, oh my gosh, this weirdo is, dealing with the same crap that I am, has the same baggage.
Antisocial. We should probably hang out.
Right. Let's kind of fast forward a little bit. I feel like we're really dragging out these topics, but let's just talk briefly about late high school. I'm just going to mention really quickly how when choosing where to go to school, it was not really a choice that I had. It wasn't so much a choice. It was more who is going to give me the most funding.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go there kind of deal.
Yeah.
Where it was kind of tough. Like I said, I was largely growing up with sports, and a lot of the girls that I was playing tennis with and, academy and practice, whatever, they were all really, really pushing to go D1, letting me know like, oh, like this school is checking me out. I'm flying out to this school to do a visit. And that wasn't even an option in my life. My parents never at one moment allowed me to even think like to go D1 because they were just like, no. One, you're not going to get a D1 scholarship. Like, let's be real. Like, I was okay. I was an okay tennis player. I wasn't that great. But I was not D1 material. Maybe, like, a really, really crappy D1 in, like, the Midwest and, like, Oklahoma or something. But I'm not going to Oklahoma. Let's be real. So they basically really shut that idea down fast. Like, they were just like, don't even think about it. We're not paying for it. You're not going. So it was exclusively D3s, D2s, NAIA. Okay, literally anything other than D1, let's just say that. And it wasn't like I didn't get to choose. It was just like, who's going to give you the best package, and that's where you're going, which was really funny because the school I ended up going to, Laverne, on my overnight visit that I did with one of the girls on the tennis team, she specifically told me, do not come here. The coach is cray.
Which to this, like, famous last words.
Really?
Like, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, this girl's just probably, like, really sensitive or something. And oh my gosh, I'm happy I went to Laverne, but she was not wrong. Like, she really wasn't wrong. But, so figuring out where to go with life, it wasn't so much figuring out for me. It was more just, where am I going to be taken?
And similar to me, like, we could let this segue into more so college and stuff. But
right.
Similarly, I actually didn't, like, I was never going to do cheerleading really in college. Like, that wasn't really on my radar as far as that goes. Like, that was something, like, I had stopped doing that my junior year. My senior year, I had spent working at In-N-Out, actually, in Chino.
Right.
Mostly because, like, my parents were of the belief that, like, once you hit the legal age of working, you should be working.
Yeah.
Which is really a great thing, because I was set up in a lot of ways that I feel like my peers weren't, like, after that point. So I'm never going to say that that was a mistake or whatever. Like, that was a great thing for me to do. But anyway, so I only applied to 4 schools, all local, because I wasn't interested in going somewhere, like, going out of state for anything. Like,
Okay.
I'm a homebody.
Yeah.
I like being around my family. Like, that's how I grew up, really, like, concentrating on family. So I wanted somewhere where I could just always go home whenever I wanted to. So I chose between a couple different colleges. I got into all 4 that I applied to. And it was really between... I really wanted CBU, California Baptist University, is where I wanted to go. And, you know, the reality of it is that CBU is pretty expensive. I mean, Laverne was pretty expensive as well. However, Laverne was willing to give me more money.
Exactly.
And the reality of it is that I had a twin brother and then an older brother who was going to be starting his senior year of college. So that's me 3 kids in college at one time for my parents. So just kind of like... Laverne was the only place I could go.
Right. Which,
really,
same situation, you know. I feel like I maybe painted my parents in a bad light, but it was, you know, they were just trying to survive.
Yeah, for sure.
They were trying to make decisions.
They're just trying to go.
Right. They're trying to make decisions where everyone's going to be okay. Because I also had a sister who technically she should have been out of school. So shout out to you, Danielle, for going that extra year at Cal Poly. But my parents are paying for her there, and they had to pay for me to start at a different school, and they did give me the possibility of going to a private school, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And Laverne was a great school. It really is. And honestly, looking back now, I'm so happy I went there. It's just, it wasn't my first choice. I'd never really mentioned my first choice, but my first choice was to follow my father's footsteps and go to the University of Redlands.
Yeah.
Which it's all the colleges I applied to were all in the same conference. So it was kind of interesting being recruited by like all the coaches when they know I'm like applying to like their competitor school. But yeah, at the end of the day, I even bought, you know, like Redlands gear, you know, like sweatshirts and like hats and like, you know, stuffed animals and stuff, because I was so dead set on going there. And as soon as the letters came in, like the, what are they called? The letters of...
Acceptance
letters? No, not acceptance letters, but the gift package letters, like your grants.
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. Those minor details are so beyond me, especially at that point, because I'm just kind of like, I was so helpless back then when it came to that stuff. Like, you know, my mom had to hold my hand through like all of it. Really, she still does. Right. I'm just kind of like,
it's hard. It's difficult.
An adult in practice.
Absolutely. But yeah,
whatever. That's how we started.
Yeah.
Both our careers at Laverne was being like, we don't want to be here. This is not our first choice school. Like, I know me for certain, like, when they moved me in, I was, like, my parents left after moving me in, and so did my twin brother came as well. And I remember laying in my room at school, like, just on my bed, crying, because I was kind of like, I just did not, I was so unhappy.
No, I didn't know that. That's so sad.
Yeah, I mean, because at the point, too, like, you know, I had gone through so much with friends during high school that just kind of, like, the thought of having to make new friends was, like, repugnant, and then... At that time, you know, my best friend from high school, she had moved to Oregon, and then my boyfriend at the time had also moved to Oregon, and then I had another close friend who also moved to Oregon, so I was really resentful towards the state of Oregon in general during that time in my life. Yeah. But, I mean, it ended up being a good thing because, you know, that's how really both of our lives started,
Right.
I feel.
Absolutely.
Because I think that, you know, the most growing I've ever done is, you know, being a person right now has been mostly through college.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
experiences in college have been stellar.
Really meeting and bonding while watching Mulan. Because it was during orientation week. And, like, I think the orientation activities were, like, winding down. And it was a particular day where, you know, you got the opportunity to go to Boomers, which for those who don't know or haven't been, it's basically a really small scale theme park kind of area.
Right.
In it's like kind of the Montclair-ish area.
Right. It's
whatever.
I don't know that I would call it a theme park, more like a permanent carnival.
I guess.
Basically, is what it is.
Point being is that Drea and I both didn't want to go.
Yeah.
Like,
I was over it. I was so tired.
Yeah, there's that. And I had such social anxiety. Like, even we were all getting along as suite mates.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We were all getting along, especially at that point. Like, in the very beginning, we all got along super well. And I just was not about, like, I didn't want it to feel like a third wheel anywhere. Mm-hmm. So, luckily, you were staying behind as well. And we both, like, took, like, our pillows from our beds, like, onto the couches, and we were just, like, laying there watching Mulan.
Yeah, which I have no idea why we decided on Mulan, but I love that we watched that. That's such a fantastic movie to bond over.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's how, that all really started for us. And then,
right.
I feel like we both had our experiences there afterwards that, like, we were apart for a while.
Right, yeah. It definitely is interesting how we kind of did this fork in the road for a while and then looped back. It was like a roundabout situation. Yeah. But yeah, during, like Alex said, at the beginning of our freshman year experiences, all of us in our suite got along famously. Like, it was, like, amazing. We all just clicked, and it was family.
We were the social hub of that particular floor because we lived in the honors floor with all the nerds.
Right.
It was a new dorm building, and on the first floor was reserved for honors freshmen, and that's where we lived, and everyone is always in our suite all the time.
Absolutely. Everyone from surrounding suites would always be in our suite just hanging out. It was fantastic, but it became somewhat of an issue because I, soon after beginning freshman year, I started dating one of the other guys who was, friends and living on the same floor.
He was one of the guys from next door, actually.
Absolutely. And it created this weird kind of rift between all of us, partly because, some of the girls resented me for dating him, feeling that, I, was taking away their friend or that I overstepped my boundaries with maybe they had a crush on him. I'm not naming names, but it became kind of like an isolating experience for me. I felt like that outsider, not from you, never from Alex, but from definitely everyone else. It was a notable kind of like exclusion, and I definitely came in a few times on people talking crap on me, basically. And then also another time, like, I came in on, like, another girl, like, stealing snacks from my room. And it's just like, what is this? Like, what environment am I now living in? So because of that, I really just kind of separated myself from the situation. And I was really just spending time with my boyfriend because I couldn't handle it. And that's partially one of the reasons why Alex and I kind of separated for some time. And it was also largely because I was so dead set on graduating early. I don't know entirely why, partially because I have this need to over excel in whatever I'm doing for some reason. And I also felt like so compelled to help my parents financially. And so I was really just like cutting across any social possibility of doing anything and just, doing homework or studying or just anything to get ahead. And obviously with sports, it just took up all my time. I didn't have any extra time to ever devote to spending with you or with anyone really for that matter other than my teammates. And then lastly, just my mom went through somewhat of a health scare my sophomore year. And because of that, it kind of like fast forwarded my life. I kind of had to grow up at a much faster pace because one, I wasn't just taking care of myself anymore. I had to now take care of my mom, who is, you know, like possibly she could have not survived through it. So it was a really detrimental experience. And because of that, you know, I just didn't have time to devote to anything.
Yeah. I mean, I understand. Like, we all, you know, we're going through different things at that point, because after we had separated, like, after my freshman year, really, after that point, I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend from high school. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, feeling like I needed to find a real community there, just because I had a community-ish back when I was in high school with cheerleading. And then now, like, most of our suite mates had gone Greek, mm-hmm. except for you and one other person.
Right.
And me.
Right.
I hadn't done that the first time because I'm just kind of like, I don't want to be a stereotypical sorority girl, blah, blah, blah. And
right. then you became a...
yeah. Well, I didn't become stereotypical, but the very
right.
next year I was just kind of like, well, you know, it's working out so well for all of my other friends. Maybe it's something I should give a try. And it was something that I will never regret. Mm-hmm. It was one of, like, one of the best decisions I've ever made. I've met the best people through that experience, and they really helped carry me through the rest of my college life, going through my different things that I went through, and then going through changing my major my sophomore year. And I wouldn't have the job that I have now if it wasn't for the fact that, you know, I had connections through sorority. Like, I got my internship because a sorority alum was working in that office.
Absolutely.
And that's how I got my job, and that's, you know, how I got to where my life is now. So, you know, I think that we all had to do our individual journeys at that point to really, like, get us to where we were going to go.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, although we did graduate at different points in time, we had similar
turmoils.
We had similar turmoils when it came to graduating itself, because we both missed graduating with honors by, like, a hair. And
Ooh.
both for very frustrating different reasons.
Yes, absolutely. So we go with yours first, because
Okay.
mine is just, it just really revs my engines.
So for me, I really should have been more cognizant about it. I mean, I'm not sure there was really a ton that could have been done about it necessarily, because so my junior year was really difficult for me as far as, like, grades go. Actually really difficult, like, I was doing really bad, which I wasn't.
Right. Okay, I just want to put a disclaimer right now.
Yeah.
I feel like you and I could come off as annoying in some senses, because we have such high levels of expectation.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So sometimes we say, like, oh, we're so terrible, we're so this, and everyone who knows us is just like, what the hell are you talking
about? To clarify, for us, doing bad is probably
standards.
Getting anything below, let's say, a 3.5.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for our standards. And I'm so sorry if that annoys anyone, but deal with it.
That's just the environment that we grew up in. We were expected to excel academically, mm-hmm. I feel.
Right.
So, anyway, I should have been more cognizant about it, but, like, you got emails, like, towards the end about, like, oh, if you're going to be on these lists or whatever, then, you know, you should be on the email. So if you were going to be graduating with honors, you should have known by that time. And I had wondered vaguely about it in, like, the weeks preceding graduation. But then it wasn't until, like, I was, like, at the hall where we were graduating, and I was being told where I should go line up, mm-hmm. and I wasn't lining up with the rest of people graduating with honors.
Right.
So I went to a table and was like, well, what is this all about? Like, I should be graduating with honors. And because I had done really well that semester as well. And one thing, which I'm not sure if this is universal because I don't know anything about anything, mm-hmm. but our last semester is not taken into account when you're graduating.
Right.
So all the good grades I had gotten that semester meant nothing.
Right.
Nothing until afterwards. Mm-hmm. So I went up to the lady and she checked what my GPA was, and I was off from graduating with honors by 0.01.
That is such a nightmare.
I was like, I had a moment where I had to really get myself together, because I was, like, crying. Because I'm just like, I'd worked so hard, and I was off by 0.01.
That's horrific.
But then, really, you know, salt in the wound is when I got my diploma. Like, it says that I graduated cum laude, because I did.
Right.
But
you didn't get to. It was never acknowledged.
I didn't get to walk with the rest of my friends who were in honors because of 0.01 of my GPA.
Yeah, trash. Absolute trash.
Yeah, that was horrific for me. But, you get over it. It doesn't really matter in the long run.
It really doesn't, but
it matters a little bit for your pride.
At the moment, it very much matters. But, okay, so just for my knowledge, because I want to speak to this comment, but what is the cutoff for graduating with honors?
I think it was... Goodness, what was it? I think it was like 3.6.
3.6? Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better for my next comment. But, okay, so basically, as I mentioned before, obviously I started off school with a biology major, and I transferred into sociology, which I did, exponentially well in sociology. But because of that first semester where I took plant bio, general chemistry, calculus, honors lit, just like all the hard classes you could possibly imagine in your very first semester of college, I had a terrible GPA that first semester, which really impacted my total GPA at the end of my college experience.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have graduated cum laude. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. I missed it by 2 points or 0.2 because I did graduate with 3.4 or whatever. But the thing that I would have gotten was departmental honors, because I think the cutoff was also 3.6, and I graduated in my department with, I think, a 3.9, like really, really close to a 4.0. So I 100% would have graduated with departmental honors. And similar to you, when we were lining up, everyone had on their diploma, and they were given different tassels for like departmental honors. And I remember sitting there and being like, oh my gosh, like, do you have to have a 4.0 or a 4.0 to get departmental honors? And I asked one of the guys who I was sitting with, who was also in my department, and he was like, no, you have to apply for it. And I was like, what? What do you mean you have to apply? He's like, yeah, before we graduate, you had to have submitted paperwork to basically say, I want to be included in this departmental honors program or whatever, like whatever. And I was so furious because I was never told that. I had no clue that that was even anything that I had to do. And the worst part is my advisor was the head chair of the department.
So they should have told you.
He 100% should have told me. Like, obviously, every single semester, I don't know how it is in other colleges, but every single semester when we were scheduling classes, we had to have advisor meetings.
Yes.
And so he obviously knew exactly, like, my GPA, my standing, the classes I was taking. I was in, like, 2 of his classes. Like, he knew me pretty well. And he never once thought it was a good idea to tell me that I have to apply for these honors. And so I graduated cordless, like in the very back of my class, just like, oh, and enjoy magical kind of deal, just like, and an afterthought. So I was like sitting there like so furious, just like, okay, well, this is really just terrible.
To add a point to how, bad it really was that he didn't like tell you because he didn't know you. For anyone who doesn't know, like the class sizes in Laverne,
right?
Like, especially like the more concentrated things get, like there are maybe 10 people in your class. So like when she says they know you, they really do.
Oh yeah.
They know a lot about you, in fact.
Absolutely. Like this guy really, really knew who I was. And to your point, I think that graduating class for sociology, I'm pretty sure was like 15 kids. Like I'm pretty sure it was not a lot.
Yeah, so...
I could be exaggerating, but I remember it not being a lot.
And regardless of our graduating without honors...
Right, I'm so sorry. That took us forever.
We've made it past, all that stuff. And, after college, like, I think we both had a few things that, like, really, resonated with us. Like, I've, had my own family health issues where, like, the backbone of my family has always been my, paternal grandparents. Like, that's, who... we grew up kind of idealizing, and they both ended up getting dementia. And like that was a really hard thing to go through, and it really helped me in the sense to open up to other people and to talk more about how I feel about things, because it got to a point where I couldn't keep it all in. Yeah. I just really had to reevaluate like how I was looking at life, because there's nothing like, people you love,
suffering. Yeah, watching them.
To really change your life.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
So, is there anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, just exactly the same. Just, once you're out of college, it's kind of hard to really know what's next. Like, what do I do next? especially for me, being that I had that huge identity crisis and I really didn't know what I was going to do. And even when I chose my major of sociology, it wasn't necessarily with the intent of pursuing it. I just kind of chose it because this is something that interests me and I'm in college and I might as well go into a discipline that I really enjoy. So coming out of college, I didn't know what was next. You know,
Yeah.
I applied for my a few schools to get my MSW, which is a Master in Social Work. And I was rejected from 2 of the 3 and accepted into the most prestigious of the 3, so it makes no sense. But that being said, the most prestigious was USC, and it was the on-campus program, not the virtual. And that, I mean, I'm sure anyone knows, I mean, who has heard of USC, which is everyone, it's an expensive school. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I realized I can't actually do this, you know? Yeah. And so I was already unsure of what I'm doing, and now I took the first step to try to find something, and then I realized, okay, just kidding, I can't do this. So then I had to reevaluate it again, and I just kind of was panicking. I was in this panic state where I was just like, okay, I'm just going to be a teacher then. So I applied to get my teaching credential and my master's in teaching, and I just kind of chose the first school that accepted me, which was Point Loma Nazarene in San Diego, which it was an interesting experience, definitely. I'm not Christian. I call myself car crash Catholic because I really only become religious when something really detrimental is happening to me. Mm-hmm. But Point Loma Nazarene is a Christian school, which nothing against that, absolutely nothing. But it was just such a different culture. Talk about a bubble. Every single person in my classes was, you know, white, Christian, American, you know, kind of deal. Like, and I was just this only like little Mexican girl, like heathen in the corner. And it was just, I felt so out of place. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. So after like 1 month of being there, I dropped out. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I already failed with my trying to get my master's in social work. I failed trying to get my master's in teaching. What the hell am I going to do? And this is just, as we said earlier, we have very high standards for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so going through these different failures was just like such a hit on me emotionally and just like identity wise. And that's why I kind of just circled around and ended up getting my MBA, which is Master in Business Administration, just as a cop-out, basically, because I'm just like, you know, at the end of the day, whatever I decide doing, having a business major is going to be pretty okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up where I am now. Not because I necessarily chose this path, but I kind of was just having these panic attacks along the way, and this is how I dealt with it.
Yeah. And I feel like to anyone who's really wondering, like, what was the point of listening to all this? I feel like, you know, what we're trying to get across really about, like, all these, like, stories that we've been telling is that, you know, life isn't really...
that serious.
It's not, well, yes and no. Like, not to take yourself so seriously and to be just comfortable with change.
Right.
And to be comfortable with the unexpected and, you know, seeing where your life goes because... You know, I am one who always believes that there's a plan for everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's a, you know, overarching plan for my life. So, you know, it's just important to, you know, just take everything in stride and be open to all these changes. Because I feel like everything that I've gone through
has led up to this moment.
Yeah, has led up to this moment.
Right.
And it has really made me just more flexible as an individual.
Yeah.
Because there definitely was a point in time, like even, you know, when you first met me where I was very rigid about certain things and... You know, there's nothing like time and experience that beats that out of you, but...
Yeah, absolutely. Which I totally agree. It's, yeah, basically the moral of this podcast is basically to just kind of, if anyone is out there feeling like they are going through any of the situations that we went through, you know, having identity crises, feeling like they don't belong, just have, you know, anger, frustration, what have you, just know that, you know, it's eventually, and I know this is so stereotypical and so cliche to say, but it's going to be okay.
Oh, for sure.
After, you know, after all this happens, it's just you're just going to come out a more stronger, a more well-rounded person. Because really, I also agree so strongly that everything in your life happens for a reason. And although I do have, you know, some regrets to an extent, I really wouldn't change anything in my life.
Oh, for sure.
Because I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have the things that I have today.
Yeah. I was thinking about it earlier today. I'm just like, what would my life have been like if I chose to be a Spanish teacher?
Yeah.
And stick with that major, like in college. I'm just kind of like, I would have missed out on so much that I have in my life right now. Like I met so many wonderful people through my job now.
Right.
That I would never want to change or lose. So I'm just kind of like, life really... life, and for me, I feel God as well. Like, it really gives you everything that you didn't know you needed.
Right, absolutely. It's things that kind of are insignificant in a way because you really don't think twice about them. Mm-hmm. But when you really sit down and get into the nitty-gritty of it all, it's just like, wow, if one thing went different, I would not have any of this.
Mm-hmm. It's, really important to just recognize the good things that, happen through all the struggle and all the turmoil. Not that we've had the most taxing of experiences, but, everyone has their different things that they go through. And,
everyone's struggle is unique. And I think regardless of if, you out there are having a more difficult time than we did, or maybe an easier time, all of us learn the same lessons from it. All of us learn to become better from it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so overall, that's basically what we wanted to touch on this podcast, especially being the first podcast that we release, really. We wanted to start it off on kind of a positive note. One, just letting you know who we are, but also giving you that good vibe, energy, whatever you want to call it. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully you got something positive out of it. Do you want to add anything, Alex?
You really said it all there. Hoping that there's something in our lives that's relatable to other people, because I feel like you and I have had so many conversations, Drea, about how, people probably don't talk enough about what they're going through and, like, really realize that, a lot of people are really going through similar things and are getting through the other side just fine.
Absolutely.
So it's really good to, feel like you belong in a community, because I feel like, you and I have struggled with issues of, feeling of belonging and stuff. So,
absolutely.
That's where we wanted to start, is who we are, what has led us to this point. It won't always be so serious. We have a lot slated for a lot of fun things to talk about that we have planned, and we're really excited to make those and push those out.
Right, and just giving a little sneak peek to next week's oh gosh, I don't know if it's going to be weekly actually, but we're
figuring it out, guys.
Right, giving a little snippet to our next episode released. We will be covering, as I mentioned earlier, I believe, we will be covering relationships and crushes in our lives and the stories that have come out of that. So I'm sure you guys can imagine there's going to be some juice. It's going to be some tea, as the kids say these days.
Oh, good Lord.
But stay tuned. And I do want to add just one more snippet before we leave, which we have not actually talked about this, but I think it'd be a good thing to add. In the event that any of you really, any of our stories, any of our experiences really resonate with you, I want to open up the floor here and let you know that if you do want to follow us on our Instagram, which is at TRUUU Podcast, TRUUU with 3 U's, and you want to like DM us or comment on our pictures and just kind of like share anything, or you just want an ear to listen to, whatever you're going through, I would love to be that person for you.
For sure.
So opening up the floor to that, obviously, if nobody's going to take us up on that, that's no problem for us either. But in the event that you feel the need, go ahead.
Yeah, tell us what you think, man. We want to hear it.
Absolutely. All right. I think that's all we have for this podcast.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good to me. We're Drea and Alex, and that was the podcast. Our first episode, we got through it.
We did it. And
against all odds.
Thanks for being with us, guys. Signing off.